Welcome to the Practice Podcast, conversations probing the nature of practice. I'm your host, Dave Fearon, co-author with Peter Vale of the digital book on Practice as a Way of Being. Find it at mylibrary.world. And now to our show. This is folks, I'm pioneering again. I'm changing a little bit of the direction of our podcast to a very wonderful place for us to listen to a conversation between me and Barbara Saabye, who is a really, really good friend from way back. And the direction I'm choosing is that Barbara and I will talk about what interests her the most. And last time we met in person, I heard that she was very enthusiastic about genealogies. So we may be talking a bit about that, or a lot about that. But we put this in context. Barbara, when were you and I at the Oakdale sub-primary school?
Right, we were. And I think that was a grade level below kindergarten.
Yeah.
I think we were 4 years old.
Yeah.
In our neighborhood.
I walked from Forest Park with Priscilla Bennett and other of our friends all the way to that school. And I must have been 4 or 5 years old. And we crossed the busiest road in Portland. Thought nothing of it. And we had a wonderful time. But years later, when a classmate of ours, Marilyn Brazier, would host these reunions, and I really miss her and what she did. She passed away recently, but she would host these reunions, and then they'd put up pictures, school pictures of various grades, and it was terrific to see what cute little kids we were, and then we were getting bigger. And now we're really big.
Yes, that's a long time ago.
But I think maybe I'm guessing here that one of your values for genealogy is that we lived at a time when it meant a lot to be in Portland and be sort of a part of an ancestry. I can remember we'd have kids who families or grandparents migrated from Italy or from Greece or from Armenia, all over. Iran, thank God, I wouldn't have had a lovely marriage with Connie. And it was great. We loved it. And we loved knowing a bit about, or a lot about, each other's backgrounds and meeting each other's. In my case, I remember sitting with Richard Magallian's Armenian grandmother, aunt. It was his aunt who had lived from Armenia to the States. She had made through the Ellis Island. And I probably could have asked her 1,000 questions just to learn more about that part of the world, and all of the different things that contributed to Armenia. So let's start then about genealogy. It's a practice because it's something that you do quite regularly. What sort of lit the flame for you? Do you remember when you started looking into the...
Yes, I think it's interesting. Most people don't seem to get interested into genealogy until they're older. And that's of course what happened to us. What happened was Alan's parents both passed away, and they lived in Rhode Island and we lived in Maine. And Alan's brother and sister were in Rhode Island, so they could do a lot of the settling of that family's, home and selling of the home and things like that. But what we did, we would drive down every weekend for a little while to help out. And we would bring home all the papers and things that we could find in the house, pictures, photos, and they were savers. They had every bill still in the envelope from every kind of uh, company that they were dealing with. So we had a lot to go through. So we would just bring home bags and boxes and sit at night and go through these wonderful photos and things we'd find. And I would keep finding these little gems that I didn't know what to do with,
Yeah.
birth certificates, death certificates, photos, pictures of family reunions, lists of people's names. And a lot of these people we didn't even know.
Yeah.
So I just started collecting them all and telling my own family, my mother and my sister at that time, who lived near me in Maine, about what I was doing. So we started also at the same time kind of looking at our own family. And my
Uh,
sister became very interested in genealogy also at the time. And the interesting thing was my mom had not really known her father. Her father died when she was 2.
mm.
And then her mother remarried, and, she just was not in connection with that, Cook the last name was Cook, and he
Mhm.
happened to go back to the Mayflower just about.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Don't we all,
I think
right?
16 we found he goes back to Walter Cook in 1643, so he came just a bit after,
Yeah.
but, we didn't know any of that, and we had no photo of him, of my grandfather, um, so we started doing genealogy, and it was so hard in those days. Oh my gosh, we're going back, I don't know, 30 or 40 years now.
Yeah. There
Um,
were certainly the internet was quite
we had
young, and it
oh,
was
the
very hard to
internet.
access.
I
Yeah.
think all we had was AOL, and I was in a little group. I did join a little group there of people that were researching the Cook family, my
Okay.
mother's family, but that was after a while. What I had to do was I went into the Maine Historical Society in Portland and got a little start, but I couldn't go very far. There were none of these online websites,
No.
ancestry websites to help you. So I would take the bus down to Boston to the New England Genealogical Society, or
Wow.
sometimes I would drive down to Route 128 in Boston to the National Archives. And also, I was able to go to the LDS Church out in Cape Elizabeth, Maine,
Yeah.
because these LDS churches, the Mormon churches, have been the repository of all sorts of records. That's their mission. They
Yeah.
travel all around the world and collect birth, marriage, death, and perhaps other types of information.
Mhm.
So, but at that time we were using microfiche and microfilm. So
Oh,
I would
yeah.
have to look
You
up
had to roll
things
them
and
through
get
the
rolls of film and feed them in
yeah.
and scroll through.
Yeah.
So
And
it
then
was
you have to copy
laborious.
down, right? You couldn't really, or maybe you could print them out at that time, but it was hard. So you'd be
I
rolling through the microfiche,
Yeah,
and then you say, "Oh, I'll stop here. This is a Cook,"
yeah,
and you don't have to write it all down. So,
right. So
what?
anyway,
Yeah,
um, at one point we took a trip with my mom and my sister and I, and we drove down to the where her dad had grown up and was born, outside of Boston. And we went into the library and we asked if they could help us with this family, and they gave us a name. And he turned out to be a wonderful cousin, um,
ah,
and we're still very friendly to this day. We talk every once in a while. We exchange Christmas cards. He ended up coming to all my mother's birthday parties because my mother lived to be 102.
wow.
And we had big birthday parties for her when she was 90, 95, 100, and we would have, like, 50 or 100 people to these parties because family and all the friends, and of course, her friends were all our friends because my sister and I both played bridge, and my mother was part of these groups. So
Hmm.
we had so many friends and so much fun, but through him, we finally had our first picture of our grandfather, and
Oh, wow.
lots of his records that he had done because he was also doing genealogy. So that's where I dipped my toe in and jumped in,
That's
and
a more than a toe. I mean, all those trips, all that basically labors of love,
Mm,
as we used to call them. Before it was easy. Now, you subscribe, click, 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 boom, boom. But we'll talk about that. But what I think the the fact that you actually put the effort in, read the microfiche and reached out to names and called people. Look at the discovery. You've discovered a cousin.
right.
You got a picture of your biological grandfather, which,
Hmm.
what are the chances? A trillion
Right.
to one.
Yeah.
So what I'm sensing already is why we call it genealogy. When you're doing it, when you're putting it into practice, it's like being a detective as well as a researcher. See, a researcher would be looking at what is, but a detective wouldn't settle what is. They want to know more. What's behind that? Who,
Right.
what uh, was the job change that made them move from here to there? So
Hmm.
you're detecting genealogy.
I love that. I love doing that. As you know, I've tracked down a lot of our former classmates.
Yes, yes.
I love doing that. It's a good challenge.
So after you had the early success, um, you find yourself and your sister sort of branching out now and wanting to know more about more people. Is that, like you just said, is that sort of a slow transition to being where you are today, or did you have, like, let's keep doing this?
Oh yeah, we worked on it all the time, and we started a club within a club. There was a women's club in Portland, Maine, the Women's Literary Union,
Yeah,
and they had groups, subgroups, of interest, and so we said, "Well, let's start a genealogy club." So we
sure.
had all these women getting together and doing research. So, we helped them along the way, and then, of course, things started opening up online, which has been wonderful. And so I am now, you know, well, I just wanted to mention my husband's genealogy, which I also
Yeah.
became involved in.
Starting with all the papers that you brought back from Rhode Island.
Yes. So he was interesting. Where my family was, my mother's side went back to 1643, and my dad's side, I think they came down through Prince Edward Island and Nova Scotia in the late 1800s.
Mm-hmm.
So I only had those uh, 2, directions to go to towards.
Yeah.
But Alan, he had one he has Italian ancestry, he has English, he has Danish, he has Swedish, and maybe a few more. So
Wow.
so
They're a bunch of they're a bunch of travelers, weren't they? Like,
yes.
wherever they would stand, they would
He
start
had he
start a family.
out of his 8 great-grandparents or 8 great-great-grandparents, um, he has one that was an American.
Hmm.
So, he had all these other countries. So that was kind of interesting too. But what we actually did was we reached out to these cousins of his that we found in the papers again.
Hmm.
And we went to visit one cousin. Now, this would be his father's first cousin, but
Hmm.
they lived in Connecticut, and Alan's dad settled in Rhode Island. And when they were younger and the kids were little, they kind of got together. But by the time Alan was 10 or older, they weren't doing that anymore. So he had no knowledge of these cousins. And there were
Hmm.
3 sisters over in Connecticut that we met. They were One of them was doing genealogy too. So
Oh,
we spent quite a bit of time on and off visiting her. I went and stayed with her, did research in that area. I went and
wow.
stayed with another cousin in the Boston area who I had never met, but I met through doing the genealogy, and they came to visit us in Maine when they were up this way. So it's very much, making new friends, but they happen to be related to you.
It's a lot of that, and I can see where your own spirit, kind of kicks in. It's no longer a method or just something to do, like playing cards, which is some people are passionate about. or bridge, but it was learning who's part of your background and in Alan's in a larger sense, but also making friends, reconnecting with relatives. And I suspect when you've had a face to face with any of those folks, the stories would flow, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
We
And
we brought them all together, Alan's family, this Connecticut branch and our Rhode Island branch. We had a cookout and a day that we set aside in the summer on the Rhode Island shore,
mhm,
and everybody came and met each other, and we got together several times, but um, it's just been super fun.
yeah. What sort of stories would you tell each other back when you make like a reunion like that? And uh, obviously, people want to know where you are now, what you do. Do you have children, grandchildren? But when
Hmm.
it starts like we did when we started this conversation, going back to when we were in sub-primary, so that's the beginning of our connection. And then we could have gone the whole hour just talking about the schools we attended and teachers we had and the friends we had made. But in your case, what sorts of stories do you remember picking up on that kind of surprised you about the families?
Well, I think I'm thinking back to when we got together on a beautiful sunny day with the on Point Judith Pond in
Mm-hmm.
Narragansett,
Mm-hmm.
and it's I can just picture all the generations, including Alan's dad, who was there, and a
Oh,
couple of
wow.
others from that generation, and then their children, and then the little kids,
Mm-hmm.
and then even smaller. Because I remember my son and daughter-in-law were there, and they're probably their two little ones. So you probably had four generations there,
Oh,
and
wow.
I just think it was easy to talk. I can't tell you what we were talking about, but of course they
Oh,
were,
yeah.
kids out in sailboats and swimming and people getting ready to cook barbecue, and there was just so much going on. But we had been in touch a little bit, sharing things um, by email or whatever. I think by email in those days.
Yeah.
So it was just easy to talk to each other, even getting to know
Wouldn't
each other.
wouldn't it be amazing if you could have like had a documentary and taking the whole thing in, documenting that day with
Hmm.
four generations
Right.
and having fun and enjoying each other's company.
Yeah.
Uh, that, but you got it all up here.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And
So
so now,
now, go ahead.
oh, I was going to say, so now I think that I have, sort of stopped on my own family. I kind of go in and check once in a while what
Mm-hmm.
possibly could be new, but I think I found most everything that I could find on my family.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of got antsy wanting to do more. And so often when I'm out with people, and honestly, I can't wait to tell you about this wonderful website, which is part of the LDS Mormon Church.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's, they've always had ways to research there, but it's just in the last few years that they've developed this wonderful website now, which
Mm-hmm.
is called familysearch.com. And
Mm-hmm.
they have what's known as a collaborative family tree. So
Ah,
all the other genealogy programs, you're working on your own tree, and somebody side by side with you could even be from your family, but they're working on their
on their
own
tree.
tree.
Right.
And they're two separate things. And they might find X, Y, and Z, but not A, B, C. But you found A, B, and C, and there's
Yeah.
no
And
way
never the twain
nobody's
shall meet.
sharing that. So I love this wonderful website um, that you can join for free, amazingly, and people work collaboratively on
Yeah,
the
that's a tough
same
word.
person.
Yeah. How how
So
how do you engineer that? So you're in there and you're gonna say, I want to search the Fearon family.
yeah,
And so how do you know that someone else is interested in that or doing that? Do you like have
well, when you go in and start, you put in a family name. Of course, the farther back you can go to put that family name in, the better,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's more apt to be there because of compilation of generations.
Right.
Um, so if you go in and put in a grandfather, great-grandfather, and if you have a date maybe, of birth,
Hmm.
death, just a general idea,
Hmm.
a ballpark figure, if you have a place name, a
Yeah.
state, a city, that helps, and you
Yep.
put that in, if you're lucky, and so many times I'm lucky because now I do it for other people, and
Hmm.
so many times, boom, it pops up and it's already there, and people have been contributing to it,
Ah.
and putting in data, um, birth, marriage, pictures, photos, write-ups, family histories are in there, and,
Okay.
not always, but you get lucky and get
Hmm.
a lot of things. So now I offer that, as you know, through my church every year. They have an auction to raise funds, so I
Hmm.
put in, an opportunity to find out, more about your family if I'm lucky, and
I bet you get some takers, don't you?
even if it doesn't pop up right away, then I can do some searching and start to
Yeah.
work and build it.
Yeah.
Yes, I've got every year somebody buys it. So right now I'm starting on I have a new one to work on. And I
Yeah.
take plenty of time because I'm busy. I'm very busy this time of year for a few months,
Yeah.
but come May and on towards the summer, I have more time, and that's fine with the person.
Oh, yeah.
Uh,
I think nothing's going to change if they have to wait 2 or 3 months.
right,
The
right.
ancestry is still there. But
Yes.
so the collaborative part is that there are other people who are looking, let's say, at my tree because they've discovered a great uncle who's, somehow in the
Right.
branch of my tree. And
Mhm.
then this software will it tell you that John Doe is searching your tree as well or connected or
Yes, in a way. So what you do is, you go in and you search for, let's say you go in and search for a grandfather, and you
Mhm.
find him. He's in there. He's got a number. You'll have an
Mhm.
ID number, specifically to him, and you can click on that and open up and see what's there and what's been added. So it might be a photo, it might not, but, there might be there should be something there, like a birth, fact, like a birth date with
Mhm.
verification. You
Mhm.
will have found that, through the files of all the birth, marriage, death, all the
Mhm.
different things they can look at. Somebody will have found it and attached it to them. So it'll be
Wow.
clearly defined that this was like a Michigan record, from a certain date, and it's a birth date, and it's been attached to them.
Ah.
So how you work collaboratively, this is what happened. Um, True story. My daughter-in-law's mother, no, grandmother, was showing up as deceased on here, and it
Oh.
had some of her facts straight, but it showed her as deceased, and she was not deceased. So somebody had made an error, and they had put that fact in there that she, added a death certificate for
Mhm.
someone probably with the same name, but not really the same person.
Yeah, yeah.
So then you can go in and just correct it. It has to be reviewed. Something like that has to be reviewed, and then you'll hear back that that has been corrected. So I went through the process of re of fixing that, and it was corrected.
Yeah.
But that is what happens. You literally are looking through, say you're building a new one, you're literally looking through all the John Does, or maybe hopefully a better name, um, and trying to find the one that's yours and that has the correct date and correct location, and you're pretty 100% sure that this is your fellow. You will take that and add it to the person, and your name will be on there, that Barbara
So
Saabye
they know
added
Barbara
this on a certain date.
found by Barbara. Yeah.
So, and then somebody else can come in, and they find proof that the date is a little bit wrong or something, they can correct that
Yeah.
and add what they have to verify that. So
I just I'm amazed at how a particular practice like following your genealogy paths has so many people doing it, A, and seems like a lot of people are doing it, and B, that there's a willingness in this particular software, for example, to work on behalf of each other for
Mhm.
verification or for
Yeah.
additions, and it just it's like a whole thing's going on, and maybe beneath our feet or above our heads, but it's people acknowledging how important a human life is.
Right. And some of the
They,
other programs have the ability to they open it up. They some of them have the ability to go in and share your record, even though you
Mhm.
might purchase, you might have to be paying for using that program,
Mhm.
but
Yeah,
people have allowed you to look at their records also.
yeah, yeah. And let's say pick a particular life of someone from 1890 that you're looking at in someone's genealogy. And her name is Agatha so and so, and she had 9 children. Uh, and she lived in Weymouth, Massachusetts. And she was uh, listed in the census as a seamstress.
Yeah.
So you could almost begin in your imagination to place yourself with Agatha and her noisy 9 kids in a particular part of what they used to call the golden era or something, but it really wasn't. But it wasn't for people without wealth,
Mhm.
and and then you find out that those 9 kids all had their own bunches of kids, and they're out in the world.
Right.
It's sort of
It
fun, isn't it?
it is because you start, as you said, in the census, as you start to build a record of more of what they're doing, how much money they're earning, whether they're
Yeah,
renting a house or owning a house. When they immigrated is often included in there.
yeah.
Um, yeah, you start to build a picture
I
of their
also
life.
think it gives you a very significant snapshot of how a country is built. If you take that date, 1890, for example, and all of the families that stemmed out of that one marriage, uh, and then it started to add and add and add more and more people. You could get up to the thousands, tens of
That's
thousands,
that's
all descended
compounding.
because Agnes and Ralph got together and had a family. But that built that part beyond Weymouth and out into the hinterlands. Uh, and
Well,
it just gives me a feeling of the life of a country and the dynamism of it.
Family Search has that ability um, to say, which I love. Um, I can look up. I've done this with all my friends from high school, neighbors,
Hmm.
hairdressers, people I just met. You can find one of their ancestors for them. Luckily, pretty quickly, usually for me, and you can say, "Am I related to this person?" And
Oh,
honest, I'm not kidding. I am related to all my best friends in high school, Priscilla, Linda, um, go on and on. I'm related to some of my neighbors. I'm related to my hairdresser. I'm related to a art teacher I had who was from Texas. But that's because you go back on some of those, like that art teacher from Texas, we're probably going back like 15 generations
oh
back to
yeah,
Europe, and then I'm
oh yeah,
related to her. But
yeah,
that's so fun to see the line. You can see they'll show you the exact line going back so far where you 2 connect. Might
yeah.
have
I
been in
remember you
the
showed me that.
might be in the 1600s.
You printed it out for me for my. I
Yes,
think you did
yes.
a quick one on my brother-in-law, uh,
Yeah.
Jay Coyne, and it looked like a web of webs of webs of webs. But it was fascinating to look at. Of course,
We're
I'm so
related.
I'm so lazy that I haven't. You've given me that website to go to and everything. But
Mhm.
once I get settled here, then I'll do that.
Right. Well, you
But
might get hooked like
well,
me.
that's the problem. Another addiction, you know. But I am hooked on my current work is what I'm doing right now at this moment, Bob, as we're running down on our time. I'm noticing people who give me a little like a movement, a sense of wow, that person stands out in the crowd. Right locally, someone who did one take five this week on my physical therapist, Maddie, who is tremendously good to be therapized by. And I just like, I want to acknowledge that, how important the people are just in front of you are if you have a reason to strike up a connection, acquaintance, or just
Right.
get an impression. So your work could start from, let's say you met Maddie and she was working on your shoulder or something and said, well, Maddie, her last name is, I was guessing is like, sounds like it came from Bosnia or places like that in Central Europe. And next thing you know a whole lot, and then you help her know a whole lot about where she came from. But why in that moment, after all these people did all this getting together and having kids, why at that very moment are you looking at someone who's dressing your hair, uh, helping me get my balance? It's because of all the folks who preceded them. And I would like to believe that their way of being, their personality, their character, yours and mine, and folks that we notice, is has the qualities in our DNA, hopefully the best qualities of literally what 15, 20 generations of people.
Right.
Wouldn't that be cool?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Uh, I know we're going to do a genealogy on me, but I know that my mother's grandmother was a Brewster, and she grew up in Truro, where the Mayflower landed,
Yes.
settled things. So all the way through, I've been fascinated with this one person in that whole genealogy named the Elder Brewster, the iconoclastic minister who got angry at the Anglican Church and wanted to pray his own way and have people have more freedom to pray the way that they wanted to. So he was the one that instigated that boat trip along with some others. And so that's so cool. And every time I find myself being a gadfly or resisting, accepting things on face value, I think that's the old Brewster in me. Or when I'm putting my finger up in the air and preaching to the to the choir, that's the Brewster. And then
Right.
on the other side, my dad's side, it was Fuller. And there was a Fuller on the Mayflower too, who I don't know if he was actually prepared to be a physician back then, but he looked after people on the boat and continued once they were in the settlement. So there's a caregiving aspect to Fuller, Samuel Fuller, I think his name was. And that family then moved up into central New York State. And so when I find myself being unusually kind or wishing I could help someone heal, I'm thinking, hey, there's a Fuller. Now, again, I say we're running out of time, but have you had any of your ancestors pop up in you and Barbara and say, I'm being a so and so now, or I'm being so and so now?
Well, all I can tell you is that when I started doing this genealogy, it was like being on an Easter egg hunt, and
Mhm.
every little fact, because they were so hard to get in those early days, every little fact I'd get was so exciting. And I started to feel like there were people there cheering me on, unseen but felt.
Yeah.
And I felt their presence. And it was just during the early time. but I really felt comforted by that, and I was so excited about the whole process. But
And I
it
think you
was it
needed
was
that to
it
make it
was
more
really
than just something you dabbled in for a while. That
uh-huh,
feeling that this is right, that there are others who are
they're cheering me on.
cheering me on. That would get me out of my chair for sure.
Right.
Well, this has been delightful. Once again, so people will remember, and I'll put it in the description, what is the website that they can go to?
FamilySearch.com. And there they will find something called Family Tree. But it'll be all defined in the first page or so. Easy to use and free.
Yeah, and you don't have to drive to Boston to find a piece of paper.
No, armchair genealogy now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm delighted that we had this chance. I think this is the kind of thing I'll be looking to do with some others. Maybe I'll find some other Deering High School classmates who've been doing cool stuff for the last how many years have we been out of school?
I bet you will. We're not sane.
It's a big number, folks. It's a big number, but some wonderful people, and they've all sending out into the world some great kids, grandkids, great grandkids now for a lot of us our age, and time will tell how much better the world will be because of Barbara Saabye, Dave Fearon, and our families.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to the Practice Podcast, conversations probing the nature of practice. If you'd like to hear more, go to Podomatic, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. And please consider purchasing our book on practice as a way of being at mylibrary.world. It's a digital book with lots of features that you do not see in a conventional book. So once again, thank you, and I look forward to you listening again.